So, I mentioned that I was grinding my Tier 9, Tier 8 lights again, and struggling in the T49 because this is an incredibly frustrating tank, but, I have been advised, you guys have mentioned in the comments I should play it with the 90mm, but the derp gun, I love my derp guns, and when you can do this on a heavily armored Tier 9 heavy across the map, yes, this tank is a tank that can miss targets from like 5 meters away. Can miss a target while you're beside them. But sometimes the derp gun allows you to do this from across the map. Oh yeah, it's just beautiful. I mean, I love my derp guns, and that's why I tend to stick with the derp gun on the T49. But it's just, it is frustrating. You can have amazing games, or you can have absolutely terrible games. It's really inconsistent. But anyway, let's get on with today's video. Hi folks, and welcome to the Ace Tanker for the Jagdpanzer IV, the original Tier 6 German tank destroyer. Now, I went back to collect the aces on all the German TD lines that I missed the first time round. And as I was a new player first time round, this is another tank I played through without acing, so I had to rebuy it in order to pick up the ace. So this is another tank I haven't played since the first week of playing World of Tanks. It's a Tier 6, so I think I got up to Tier 7 on all the German lines in my first week of playing World of Tanks, so yeah, I was an idiot. I had nothing better to do, but anyway, as I say, I rebought the tank, and I stuck the crew from the Panzerjäger 1 in it, because, as I say, it's one of the few tanks I still need to ace, and I hit battle. Now, this was the game prior to this one, and I had a decent game. It wasn't amazing, but I only picked up about 700 XP, but it was a first class. And I was platooned with Beyond D here, who's in his Dicker Max beside me, and I said, wow, Beyond, 700 XP was a first class, so an ace should be easy. I want to go again, I want to try again. So I clicked battle a second time after rebuying the tank, and it was this game. So 2 attempts to ace, and considering I ground through this tank, I've got 142 games in this tank, according to my World of Tanks record. So that means that I played 140 games in this tank first time round as a new player, and I didn't ace it. The best I managed to do was a second class. So second time round, 2 games, we managed to ace it with a first class and an ace. So yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing what game knowledge and experience does for you as a player. So I can't believe it took me 140 games to grind through this first time around. But anyway, let's move on. The history, the development of the Jagdpanzer IV began in 1942 after the Battle for Stalingrad. Now, the Stug 3 was performing well, and because the Stug 3 was based on the Panzer III, it was decided to maybe convert Panzer IVs into tank destroyers as well. Now, there were a couple of submissions for a new design at the time, but the other submission, the one that wasn't the Jagdpanzer IV, was the Stug 4, which was a submission by Krupp, and that was rejected. And the Wehrmacht's Arms Bureau, I think that was the name of it, decided to go with the Jagdpanzer IV design instead. Now, this was a new TD that was going to have 100mm of frontal armor, or 100mm of effective frontal armor. It was going to have about 50mm on the side. It had supposed to have a top speed of 26 kilometers an hour. It had to be very low profile to help it stay hidden, and it was to be armed with the brand new Pak 42 L70 75mm. Now, this was the 75mm from the new Panther tank that was being developed. So that was essentially the plan. Now, General Heinz Guderian was against the need for the Jagdpanzer IV. He was against the development of the Jagdpanzer IV because, firstly, he didn't see the need for it. He didn't really see a point of developing the Jagdpanzer IV because the Stug 3 was already performing well in the role that it was designed for, and the Jagdpanzer IV would just be performing exactly the same roles. So it was basically pointless replacing a tank that was already performing well. And secondly, he was against it because tanks and TDs perform different roles, and simply comparing kill to death ratios between the two, between tanks and TDs, wasn't a measure of success. And finally, he was worried that the development of the Jagdpanzer IV would pull much needed resources from both the Panzer IV and the new Panther building programs. So, he was against the plan from the very beginning, but development continued against his wishes. And to add a big dose of irony, when the Jagdpanzer IV finally arrived and finally was armed with the Pak 42L70, the troops decided to call it Guderian's duck, as an insult, because it was front heavy. The gun was so front heavy. So, he was against the tank, and he ended up having it nicknamed after him as Guderian's duck. Anyhow, after the battle for Kursk in August 1943, on reading that the Stug 3s outperformed the Panzer IVs, Hitler ordered that all future Panzer IV production be switched to Jagdpanzer IV production. So companies like Vomag and Alket started building Jagdpanzers, but there were lots and lots of production delays. Allied bombing were causing shortage of materials, but the big production delay was the shortage of Panther guns. Most of the guns that were being developed for the Panther were being sent to the Panther, so there weren't guns to put on the Jagdpanzer IVs that were being built. Now, they wanted the tanks in production, or they wanted the equivalent tank in production, so Krupp were actually given the go-ahead to develop the Stug 4, while the Jagdpanzer IV was being delayed. Now, Krupp managed to develop and prototype the Stug 4 in just a month, which is amazing, but I covered that during the whole Stug 4 review. But the shortage of guns meant that the first few variants of Jagdpanzers that were built used guns that weren't the Panther gun. They used guns like the Pak 39 L43 or the Pak 39 L48. These were 75mm, but they weren't as effective as the Pak 42 L70 they were supposed to have. So not only were there variations of Jagdpanzer IVs built on based on the gun they were actually mounted with, but there were variations depending on who the manufacturer was. There were minor modifications and improvements made throughout the production runs of all the variants of Jagdpanzer IV, with things like side skirts on some of them, side skirts not on others. There were things like the angle of the front of the tank. Some of the tanks were built with a very flat front, like the Panzer IV. Others got the angled front. Another big change based on the variant was the muzzle brake. The early variants of Jagdpanzer IV had a muzzle brake on the gun, and unfortunately the muzzle brake caused large debris clouds when the gun was fired, so that gave away the tank's position, which was basically, not the point of having a stealthy tank destroyer that could fire and hit at tanks from stealth. So there were other things like track size and the number of rollers used on the tracks. So essentially there were lots of different variations, lots of different changes between the variations, but anyhow, between all the variations that were built, they actually remained in production up till the end of the war, with around 2,000 of them being built in total. Now, anyway, I've really got to stop waffling, because this is, when I get into history, I love my history. But anyway, we're here on Muravanka, and I'm here with Beyond D, as I say, in his Dickermax. Now, in-game, the frontal armor is okay for a TD. It's got about 80mm of frontal armor, but it's sloped, which gets it up to around 100mm of effective armor. So for a TD, it can bounce shots. I mean, it can't do it consistently, and it won't do it against higher tier tanks, but against lower tier tanks and even similar tier tanks, it can bounce shots from the front, so the armor is actually okay from the front. Now, the camo rating is very good. It is very small. It's very stealthy. So the camo rating is actually quite good, something I didn't realize first time round, but I didn't realize a lot about World of Tanks first time round. So it's small, decent camo, it's got very good traverse speed, it accelerates well, and the top speed is not amazing, at 40 kph, which is historically inaccurate because it was supposed to be about 26, but 40 kph is still pretty good, and it can accelerate quite well up to 40 kph. So good traverse, good acceleration, and not a terrible top speed. The rate of fire is very, very good on two guns. There are two guns that are both effective on this, and the DPM is very good on both. So, in fact, the DPM is so good, apparently, it's probably underrated. I mean, when I see a Jagdpanzer IV on the enemy team, I don't really rate it as a threat, but having played it again, having bought it again, having looked at the stats, I mean, things I didn't do first time round, I think this tank is criminally underrated, and the DPM is exceptionally good. If you're using the PAK 42 L70, the DPM is about 2,200, which is incredibly good for a tier 6 TD. But if you upgrade and you're using the final gun, which is what I am here, it's an 88mm PAK 39, and it is penetration is slightly worse than the L70, but the damage, the alpha damage, is much higher at 220. Now you still get a very, very good rate of fire, the aim time is 1.6, so good rate of fire, amazing DPM. The aim time is 1.6, and the accuracy of 0.34 is very, very good as well. So it's got accuracy, it's got aim time, and the DPM on the final gun, forgot to mention, takes you up to 2,600, and that's before crews, equipment, consumables are taken into consideration. So you can get the DPM on this thing close to 3,000 DPM on a tier 6 regular tank in game, if you, as I say, decide to pimp it out. So and that's with the final gun. In fact, the only advantage the L70 has over this is basically it's got worse DPM, but it's got slightly more penetration but less alpha. So I mean, you could use the L70 on this tank with consumables and everything else, and between the camo rating and it's basically a tier 6 E25, or could be as good as a tier 6 E25, almost as good, just not the same top speed, but definitely camo rating and rate of fire, and I think it would be quite good. But I chose to go with the final gun, which gives me more DPM, and it's quite, you can play it quite aggressively. You can actually play this as a regular TD. It's very, very flexible. It's got the camo rating, it's got the maneuverability, it's got the accuracy and the aim time, so you can play it like a regular TD. On the other hand, you can basically play it a little bit more aggressively and almost like an assault tank, and basically as a support tank. It's fast enough to keep up with most of the mediums on your team, it's fast enough to keep up with the heavies, so you can maybe use it more aggressively, which is what I do in this game because I was chasing the ace. So yeah, it actually it impressed me. I mean, it's very, very good. Now there are a couple of bad things. Okay, the alpha, if you're using the L70 gun, is very, very low for a TD. The penetration is very, very low for a tier 6 TD. As I say, you've only got 145mm of penetration, or 155 with the L70. That penetration is going to struggle against tier 7 heavies. It's going to struggle against tier 8 heavies. So it's going to struggle against some of the tanks it comes across. So the penetration is not amazing. The premium ammunition does get you up to 194 with the final gun, so that's okay. Once again, it's a TD, so it's got no turret. That means you're vulnerable from the side and rear, but on the other hand, the traverse speed is quite good, so it can be quite difficult for tanks to get to your side and rear if you're aware and if you're, keeping your tank face directly towards them. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. It really doesn't have any weaknesses. I mean, other than the penetration and the fact it doesn't have a turret, it really doesn't have any weaknesses. It really, really surprised me. I think it's, as I say, a criminally underrated tank. I think it's a very, very good TD that can be played as a TD. It can be played as almost a medium tank, an assault medium tank, or an assault tank. And I really didn't think much about this tank until I rebought it and I started playing it again, and then I realized how good it could be. So yeah, Jagdpanzer IV, this was a surprise, and not a lot in World of Tanks surprises me anymore. But anyhow, we're going to go, and enough waffling. So, as I say, we're here on Muravanka. It's a tier 7 game, so I'm bottom tier, but on the other hand, pretty much all the tanks on either side. There are 5 tier 7s on either side, and everyone else is at tier 6, so good test for the tank. And you can see the acceleration gets you up to 40 kilometers an hour, so it's not one of these TDs that struggles. It may have a high top speed, but it struggles to reach it. This tank will reach its top speed, so the acceleration is quite good. And as I say, accuracy, aim time, DPM, they're all good. And, add that with camo rating. And if you wanted to pimp the tank out, which I haven't, with a very good crew and crew skills and... okay, a little bit of a lack of gun depression. Don't know what the gun depression is on the tank, but I'll probably check that and stick it up on screen. But as I say, I only played 2 games in it. You can see the aim time is good. The shell dispersion, the dispersion looks okay, but the velocity doesn't look good there. So maybe the velocity is a weak spot or a weak point for the tank. Again, yeah, gun depression. Oh, beautiful ammo rack, 622. So yeah, we're up to 853. Okay, T71. Yeah, traverse speed on the gun seems to be quite good as well. So yeah, I wish I'd played a few more games in it, yeah, okay, so a couple of weaknesses maybe I didn't know about. The shell dispersion, or the velocity seems to be quite low, and the gun depression seems to be a little bit worse than I realised, but didn't affect me in this game. As you can see, we're up to 1,000 damage, and Artie just took a shot at me, but I should be in camo rating again. So initially, as this game begins, I'm sitting down here in the usual TD spot along with Beyond, but I'm looking at the mini-map and you can see that most of the enemy tanks have been spotted over on the other flank. Now, we've only lost 1 tank, we've only killed 2 tanks on the enemy team, but there don't seem to be very many tanks up here on this line, so I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive, and that's what you can do in this. As I say, this is one of the things that surprised me, because it's not a typical TD. You don't have to play this incredibly passively. It's got frontal armor, and if you're top tier, your frontal armor will be quite effective. It's got speed, it's got maneuverability, it's got camo rating, and it's got incredible DPM. So for a TD, it means you could sit and trade shots. I mean, if you're shooting someone who has a low rate of fire, you can out-trade them, you can out-DPM them. So anyway, yeah, Beyond is working on the SU-100. I turn around to see if I can get some shots into the middle. So the SU-100 is not a danger. Oh, missed the SB-1C. I think that was shell velocity. Don't think that was aiming, but yeah, okay. I was going to deal with the SU-100, but Beyond has got him, so... Oh, Poodle. Okay. Did have a shot on the Poodle. I'm kind of surprised. Oh, I'm looking for a better shot. There we go. It's been a while since I watched this, but yeah, okay. And you can see gun elevation seems to be quite good, and we can just start farming this Poodle now, as long as someone keeps him spotted. So you can see the alpha damage. That's 223 alpha. We gonna get the kill? No, we're not gonna get the kill. Okay, but we actually ended up doing the spotting there, and look at the gun traverse. We're able to put a shot into the SP-1C. Yeah, so the gun traverse, tank traverse, all seem to be very, very good. Can we pick up the kill? Oh, yes we can, as he passes by. So T-28 heavy tank concept. Going to be featuring on the channel very, very soon, so we can move up. Not firing any premium, didn't need to fire any premium in my 2 games on the tank. Aim for the weak spot, take him out for kill number 3. We're up to 2,000 damage. And we're just playing a little bit aggressively. Slidsvag at 74 over there, no shots. Okay, so remaining enemy tanks will almost be down in this corner, so we're just going to advance. I'm still on full health. I mean, I haven't received any shots. Artie tried to hit me at the beginning of the game, but I've just been spotted, so I'm just trying to move forward, get into cover, miss a shot in the move. So, in the meantime, Beyond is doing damage, and I'm getting the assistance damage, and then Artie hits me for 260, but the side skirts on the frontal armor means that it's not a penetrating hit. We can take out the AMX AC-46 for kill number 4. Okay, and once again, we're getting the assistance damage because we're playing on the front line. Shot in the move. Don't kill the M44, but we're going to get him again. The rate of fire is still pretty good. There we go. Kill number 5, up to 2,658 damage. And as I say, this tank really, really surprised me. So playing aggressively on the front line, getting assistance damage as well as doing my own damage. The rate of fire is surprisingly good. The accuracy is surprisingly good. Aim time is good. DPM is amazing. Camo rating is very, very good, and it's got frontal armor. I mean, it's actually a very, very good TD, and I never realized that. You know, I log into games playing tier 6, tier 7, tier 8s, and I see one of these things on the enemy team, and I never consider the fact it's a very, very dangerous tank. I think maybe a lot of players, like I did, play it as one of their first tanks in World of Tanks and don't actually appreciate how dangerous this thing can be. So I think if you were to pimp this tank out, no, we don't manage to kill the T-71, so I don't pick up my Top Gun, but yeah, I think this tank is actually very, very good. So there you go, second game in the Jagdpanzer IV after rebuying it, and we picked up the Ace, and it really wasn't that difficult. It really surprised me, but as I say, first time round, I just never embraced how good this tank could be, and second time round, yeah, it's a good tank, and yeah, maybe I'll end up keeping it in my collection. I don't know yet. But we picked up the Ace, we picked up High Caliber, finished on top with 1222 XP was enough for the Ace. But as I say, 700 XP got me as first class. So I don't think the Ace is that difficult to pick up on this tank. So 2,658 damage done, 5 kills, 18 shots fired. We managed to hit 13 and pen 13. So, you know, we weren't top tier, but it could have been worse. It wasn't a tier 8 game. So penetration is about the only negative I can come up with for this tank that's serious, and it's only going to be a problem when you're up against very heavily armored, maybe tier 7 heavies or tier 8 heavies, so, and you do have a little bit of premium for those situations, and even the premium may not be amazing, but yeah, penetration is about the only thing that I can think of that's negative about this tank. So the DPM, everything is about this tank is surprisingly good. So happy with the damage, and most of the damage you can see was done close range. Only 853 damage was done from a distance of more than 300 meters. So, you know, this is a tank you can play aggressively. You don't have to sit in the red line. You don't have to sit in the bush. It can do those things. It can do those things very well, but don't be afraid to embrace this tank and play it more aggressively, especially if you're not bottom tier. So we spotted 2 damaged 8, destroyed 5, did 555 assistance damage, and finished up with 44,000 credits with a premium account. So seems to be quite a good moneymaker if you don't have to fire any premium, and we didn't have to fire any premium in that game. So ammo costs, you know, came to only 4,500. So yeah, it seems to be quite a cheap tank to run. It seems to be a tank that maybe you can have a lot of good games in if you know how to play it well. And yeah, I think it should be a decent tank. It's a decent tier 6 moneymaker. Anyway, yeah, it wasn't my first game of the day. As I say, I played my first game after rebuying it, and it turned out to be an average game, but a first class. So we gave it another go and finished up with the Ace. So 1833 or 1888 overall. Well, that was because I was playing in a platoon, but yeah, Jagdpanzer IV. Yeah, as I say, not a lot in this game surprises me anymore, but this is a tank I played when I was a newbie. Didn't embrace the tank, didn't realize what it was good at, what it was bad at, probably played it either too aggressively or too passively back then, I don't remember, but regardless, this is a very good tank, and if you're like me and it's been a long time since you played it, it might be worth buying it again and, you know, hopping into it, see how you like it now that you're more experienced. And if you're going through this tank for the first time, if you're a newer player and haven't gotten to this tank or going through it for the first time, look forward to it, because it's actually very good. Anyhow, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.